Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here, and this is day 6 of our experience of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. If you remember last week, we spent the entire week contemplating the beauty and generosity of God the Creator, and we considered all the good that God has given us, from the vastness of our universe to our sun, our atmosphere, the fact that we have oxygen on this planet and rain, to the fact that all of the good in our lives comes from God, our children, our parents, our friends. And I hope that that week gave you some sense of how active God the Creator is in your lives, and perhaps evoked in you a sense of gratitude and awe. And at the conclusion of that week, I mentioned how contemplating the generosity of God and all the good that God has given us can also start to raise some challenging questions about what we have done with the gifts God's given us, what we have done with our planet. And this takes us into our next week, where Ignatius asks us to take an honest, hard look at the sin of the world. And that's today's topic. And I'm going to have you look at chapter 1 of Romans, Paul's letter to the Romans, verses 18 to 23. And in that section of Romans, Paul is looking around the Roman Empire in the light of the new creation, the kingdom of God that Jesus is bringing about. And he's looking around and he's seeing the injustice, the cruelty, the violence. He's seeing people who delight in other people being hurt, who seem to be blind to God's presence and activity, who have hard hearts and hard minds. And I'm having you look at that passage because Ignatius wants us to take a serious look at the sin of the world. And so, inspired by Paul, you may want to contemplate what we are doing to our own home, Mother Earth, in the destruction of the environment. You might want to contemplate how much corruption there is in nations around the world, or how greed often fuels the way multinational corporations operate. Or you may contemplate the many wars that are going on our planet, or the violence that happens in our homes and neighborhoods and schools. And so as you engage in this contemplation, Ignatius asks you to pray for the grace to feel the sorrow and shame and confusion over what we've done with the good that God has given us. And he asks you to end this contemplation by imagining yourself standing before the cross of Christ. There he is, hanging on the cross. You see, because for Ignatius, the sin of the world all comes down to the cross of Jesus. In some ways, what Jesus endures is the sin of the world, and it's his death and resurrection that begins to free the world from this. So Ignatius has you contemplate the sin of the world, and then imagine yourself standing before the cross of Christ as you consider these 3 questions. What have I done for Christ? What am I doing for Christ? And what will I do for Christ? See you tomorrow.